Electrification, depending on who you ask, may either excite or send shivers down someone's spine. That's exactly why the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid exists. A car with enough electric range and its benefits for the daily grind, whilst retaining the thrill and the sound of an internal combustion engine. So, what stands out here with the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid is the fact that you have a bigger battery now here in this car, which gives you about 80 kilometers or so of range. So we've driven all the way from Santa Rosa, Laguna, all the way here on our way to Subic. And currently we have 20 kilometers of range left, or at least 20 kilometers of pure electric range left here in the Cayenne E-Hybrid. So the usual use case kasi with the plug-in hybrid, or at least the most appropriate use case of the plug-in hybrid, is that you use the car as an electric car for your daily commute. So for example, going to work, going to the office, going to the grocery. Because yung kanyang pure electric range for this facelift is actually increased compared to the pre-facelift Cayenne E-Hybrid. So yun nga, as mentioned, in the real world, this now gets around 80 kilometers of pure electric range. And with that distance, you're basically able to go from Santa Rosa, Laguna to Alabang and back to Santa Rosa basically nang hindi na-charge, and you pretty much have battery left to spare. And then, of course, while you're at it, while you're using the car as a pure EV basically, syempre you're not consuming any fuel, you're not consuming, you're not spending any money on fuel. So you're only spending money on fuel kapag yun nga, you're gonna go on the longer routes. So, with the plug-in hybrid Porsche Cayenne, apart from the electrified part ng coaching ito, syempre, you have to remember this is still a Porsche. So, in terms of the performance, this car is still very fast. And actually, in terms of the horsepower figures, this is pushing around 470 horsepower, which is on the same level, in fact, as the Cayenne S with a twin-turbo 4-liter V8. And then, here on the highway, yun nga, typical Porsche, typical German luxury car, the car is very quiet, very refined, very serene, especially with the gas engine not running at the moment and simply cruising in pure electric mode. That's combined, of course, with the car's excellent tuning sa suspension niya. You have to remember, this has PASM or Porsche Active Suspension Management. And so, therefore, yung kanyang ride quality is really, really good. It can go from pretty much sporty to very comfortable as you're witnessing ngayon. But later, when we go to a bit of twisty roads, it's gonna firm up like basically the standard Porsche Cayenne. So, there's a really broad breadth of difference between comfort and sport, as typical of a Porsche these days na it's really trying to be multiple cars to multiple people. Now, as for the fuel efficiency part, of course, it's a plug-in hybrid, so we want to talk about that part as well. So I've used the engine na rin to charge the battery somewhat along this journey, and so we're currently doing 5.2 liters per 100 kilometers. So converted to km per liter, that's a really very fuel efficient number. So that's around mga 20 or more than 20 km per liter. That's really fuel efficient. But then again, of course, the efficiency of a plug-in hybrid will be pretty much dependent on how you charge the car. Kasi yun nga, if you're not gonna be charging the plug-in hybrid, well, don't expect excellent fuel economy numbers out of this car or even excellent electric range. But anyway, yun nga, let's talk about the car's other aspects. So yun nga, refined siya, it's very quiet. Yun nga lang, in terms of the advanced driver assistance systems, this only gets the usual automatic emergency braking and lane departure warning. Wala siyang adaptive cruise control, or at least it's an optional extra for the Porsche Cayenne. So yun nga lang, there's that part to take note of. Pero yeah, at least you get the basic advanced driver assistance tech features, which for me naman is what's important in a car these days. Yung mga adaptive cruise control naman, mga lane centering, they're pretty much like a nice to have but not a requirement for me in a car sa totoo lang. Especially with the Porsche, because you wanna, of course, drive a Porsche and not have a robot drive the car for you, di ba? So yeah, that's basically the Porsche Cayenne out here on the highway. Let's now explore how the car would perform on a set of twisty roads. Now we've hit the twisty roads here with the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid. And as expected, in terms of the way this car performs from a handling perspective, it's still pretty much the same pa rin as the standard Cayenne. So you have the PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management. You have also the ability to lower and raise its ride height depending on the car's drive mode, of course. And also worth noting, by the way, is that at this point of our drive, naubos na natin yung kanyang battery charge. So there's basically 0 kilometers na sa kanyang electric range. And so at this point, it's pretty much acting like a normal parallel hybrid in this case, with how the hybrid drivetrain in the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid is arranged. So basically, at any given time naman, the engine and the electric motor is running ng sabay. So it's never just the gas engine that's running. It's always gonna be in tandem with the electric motors. And with that in mind, ang pakiramdam niya as a result is, I'm gonna downshift a bit. You're gonna put the car ngayon in Sport Plus mode, actually in its most sporty setting. Then we're gonna use the paddle shifters here. So pretty much dynamics wise, despite having a larger battery at the back, there's no effect, I think, or there's no, subjectively speaking, there's no difference naman in terms of the way this car handles despite the added weight. So that's testament to how Porsche's engineered the Cayenne E-Hybrid to still feel pretty much like the normal standard Cayenne in terms of the way it corners. Downshift. Yeah, so there's much more instantaneous response as a result of the electric motor basically filling in the gaps of the gas engine in the 8-speed automatic. So before even the transmission downshifts, umaarangkada ng electric motors, thereby giving you very instantaneous power whenever you want to overtake, or yun nga, as with the Porsche, just want to have fun behind the wheel. And so yeah, basically with the car in Sport Plus mode ngayon, the suspension has basically lowered itself as well. And at the same time, yun nga, like in the standard V6 Cayenne, it's also keeping the car much flatter through the corners. It's also worth noting, by the way, that as an option extra here in the Cayenne E-Hybrid, you also have the Porsche Dynamic Chassis Control, or basically the active anti-roll stabilization through the active anti-roll bars. It's not fitted to this car as well as the Cayenne V6, but you can have it as an option extra if you so desire. But even then, even without the PDCC anti-roll active stabilization thing, ang sobrang flat pa rin niya kumorner, as you're gonna see ngayon with these twisty roads here. Yeah, sobrang flat niya mag-corner. So I can't imagine how much flatter pa the Cayenne would handle in the corners if it had PDCC. Then yun nga, as mentioned, with the electric motors doing its job also in filling up the gaps of the V6 engine. Yeah, that pulls really hard. So it's a full second faster than the standard Cayenne, itong E-Hybrid. So that's electrification doing its job in not just making the car more efficient, but also making the car feel more responsive, and of course, improving the car's performance. Now, let's bring the car ngayon to normal mode, and yun nga, as we bring the car to normal mode, the suspension will raise up back to its default setting. So, kanina in sport mode, the steering was, it pretty much feels like a rigid connection between the front wheels and your hand, yung steering wheel niya. Here in normal mode, it lightens up, and yun nga, it's still very precise, very rich in feel. Better, I think, pa rin than the BMW X5 steering. And then also the ZF8 with automatic in this car shuffles the gears very well. It's super smooth. So, having talked about refinement, sportiness, how does the car perform in terms of fuel efficiency? So, yun nga, as mentioned, the battery of this car has been pretty much emptied at this point. So in terms of fuel economy, unsurprisingly, mas naging matakaw na siya sa gas compared to when it had a lot of battery power. So currently now, it's doing mga 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers. It's gonna get worse pa, I think, as we drive more, because yun nga, mas gamit na ngayon ng gas engine. Pero at 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers, that's still pretty good for a V6 parallel hybrid once the battery has been almost depleted, and basically it's driving na ngayon like a normal hybrid. Especially when you consider the fact na this is pushing out more than 450 horsepower and yun nga, therefore offering a lot of performance. So it's a good compromise in terms of having more performance as well as improved efficiency. Not as efficient, of course, as a Corolla Cross if you're expecting that fuel economy, or basically a Yaris Cross, but yun nga, for the sheer performance this car offers at 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers at the moment, is still a very good fuel economy number with a car that's more than 450 horsepower as mentioned. And then of course, in a Porsche, it's also worth talking about the brakes. So with the hybrid kasi, with an electrified car, yung first 10% ng apak mo usually, yung first few percentage ng apak mo, tends to feel very mushy. Because syempre, yung una mong percentage ng apak kasi is for the regenerative braking, which tends to feel very weird kung hindi maganda yung programming ng mga automakers natin. But here in the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid, even in the first percentage ng apak mo, it feels very firm, very strong, very reassuring. And that's really a good job on Porsche in that part, in making a brake pedal that feels very natural, very linear in terms of how it feels. Especially considering that this is a plug-in hybrid na nga, and therefore it has to take into account regenerative braking. So as a recap, Porsche gave the Cayenne a mid-cycle facelift last year. So we got a revised front end, slightly higher LED headlights, which in the Cayenne E-Hybrid's case are actually HD matrix LED headlights. These headlights have 32,000 pixels or micro LEDs, which not only allows for adaptive high beam functions, but it also can project images and even warnings on the road. Now the side profile again is pretty much unchanged pa rin from the pre-facelift model, but what you will notice of course in this E-Hybrid variant are of course the lime green brake calipers, the lime green E-Hybrid badging, and of course the presence of two flaps. One for charging, in which these are its charge times, along with of course another flap for fuel. Finally, the rear end of the Porsche Cayenne still looks very nice, especially with its full width LED taillights, along with the quad exhaust tips that have been merged into two units. Now as for the Cayenne E-Hybrid's interior, well, unsurprisingly, kaparehas ng interior ng standard Cayenne. For a more in-depth interior look, you can check out our full review of the Cayenne V6. So basically, you've got two large screens, a fully digital driver's display, along with the main Porsche communication management infotainment system. The interface is simple and is therefore very easy to use. You also have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, along with the absolute best implementation of the Bose sound system. Other features worth talking about are the heated and cooled front and rear seats, the powered rear sunshade, and of course being a mid-size SUV, there's plenty of space on all two rows. Lastly, the Cayenne E-Hybrid and higher trims are fitted with a third passenger side screen, and its functionality is basically an extension of the car's main infotainment system. The glass, by the way, is tinted so hindi ko siya actually kita from the driver's side. Whether or not it's useful, it's gonna be up to you, but for me personally, the third screen I think is already tech overkill. As for cargo space, while the standard Cayenne offers 772 liters of space, this is reduced to 627 liters here in the Cayenne E-Hybrid, and that's unsurprisingly due to the car's lithium-ion battery. So the Porsche Cayenne E-Hybrid. I guess you can think of this sporty SUV as having two cars in one. An EV with a good amount of daily range, as well as a sports car for 5 with a good sounding V6 engine. When used properly, the Cayenne E-Hybrid offers electrification along with its benefits, whilst retaining the thrill of an internal combustion engine. The Cayenne E-Hybrid is indeed a plug-in hybrid that only a brand like Porsche can ever make.